Hey, hey, wives. Hello, hello, hello. Listen, y'all saying, Coach C, you on the wrong day. You popping in on the wrong day. Listen, I was supposed to come on Tuesday, really, and share, and I didn't. And so I'm like, let me go ahead and pop on real quick tonight and answer these questions, because what I was supposed to share on Tuesday, I'm still not even sharing that right now tonight. So I'm a little bit behind. But I wanted to come on real fast. And this dropped in my spirit today. And I'm like, let me just come on real fast, because I hadn't finished everything what I was going to share for Tuesday. I'm still working on that. But these questions were some questions that were brought to my attention. And I was like, okay, well, let me just come on and address the questions. And then I just do my regular live, hopefully, sometime over the weekend. And so, hello, wives, and welcome. Hello, my name is Coach T. I am a mental health wife coach and marriage consultant. I coach wives who are going through a marital hardship. They are in a challenging marriage. They are dealing with a spouse who they have biblical reasons to leave. Whether that spouse may be indulging in adultery, addiction, abandonment, or mental and emotional distress is present. This wife could literally leave this marriage, but she feels a tug. She feels a tug from the Holy Spirit, who has told her, hey, don't leave this marriage. God is going to work something out. God is doing something. I need you to stay. I made a promise to you that I'm going to restore this marriage. Be still and know that I'm God. I'm going to work on this marriage. I'm going to fix your husband. I'm going to bring salvation to him. Whatever it is that wife has received from the Lord, she has been placed in this position where she feels like, okay, I can't leave, but because I can't leave, I need to figure out how to do this. I need to figure out how to do this marriage stuff in this situation. And so I coach wives in that way. I help her to confront her grief. And then I teach her how to transform into a healthier version of herself as she is trusting God with her marriage. And then she is focusing and working on herself. So welcome, wives. And so like I said, tonight is going to be real brief. I just had 5 questions that have come up in some of my sessions that have come up. And I was like, well, let me just address some of those questions. I don't really do the Q&A thing much. I just don't do the Q&A thing. I have tried, but I don't go, half time I can't keep up with the questions that y'all send and put in here. And so, I said, well, let me just try to just answer some of these questions, and share, a little bit of insight with wives based off of, my experience I've had with some wives, and based off of, my own personal experience. And so I'm going to read all the questions first, and then I'm going to go back and address them. All right. So one of the questions is, Coach T, when is enough? Like, where is the cutoff? Okay. That's one of the questions. Another question a wife asks is, my husband has filed for a divorce. How do I handle this situation? Do I continue pursuing this marriage, or what is it that I do? Right? Another question. My husband and I are not being intimate. We are not being intimate, but we are still sleeping in the same bedroom. We still have dinner together. We still go out together to different events. However, he and I are not being intimate. Him and I are not being intimate. How do I handle this situation? Another question is, my husband is going away. On a road trip, and I believe he's taking the other woman with him. What should I do? What should I do? Right? And then the last one. My husband and I are being intimate. We are being intimate, but I feel like he's still messing around with someone else. What should I do? What should I do? Now, y'all can tell just from those questions, that's some hard stuff, right? These are some difficult questions, okay? A lot of times one of the reasons why I don't do so much of a Q&A, because these questions do require some type of consultation, some type of session, because a lot of times it depends on, different situations, where you are, what's going on with him, in order for me to really get in depth with these types of things. But because I have experience with all these things, and I have some experience with some of the wife clients that I'm coaching currently with some of these things, I will be able to share a little bit, and just kind of give wives, some insight. All of these questions are difficult, right? And any wife who find themselves in this situation, this is hard, right? This is hard. One of the things I want to start off saying is, wife, God is for your marriage, okay? God is rooting for your marriage. God is rooting for your marriage. He is the creator of the marriage covenant. The Bible tells us in Malachi that God hates divorce. He does. He does. And so you have to know and understand at the beginning of all this that God is rooting for your marriage. Okay? God is on your side when it comes down to your marriage. A lot of times when wives come into these types of situations and these types of circumstances, they have to really know, what did God say to them in the beginning? When you get hit with these types of circumstances and you get put in places like this, you have to go to the throne first. You have to seek the counsel of the Lord. A lot of times when wives get hit with adultery or addiction or abandonment or, these types of things, the first thing they will do is go run to, a girlfriend, a family member. They may go to counseling. They may even go to their pastor. But one of the things I want to just highlight and just help wives to really, really understand is, when you get hit with something like this, and I know it's very, cliche, like, oh, you're supposed to go to the Lord first. You really do need to, right? You really do need to. And the reason you need to go to the Lord first is because you need God to give you the instruction, right? You need God to give you an instruction. Sometimes that instruction is simple as, be still. I got it. Trust me. I will fix it. Sometimes the instruction that God gives you is basic. Sometimes it really, really is simple. But sometimes when God gives you that instruction, you are then to take that instruction and then go to the next person. Go to what's next. That could be a pastor. That could be a counselor, a therapist, girlfriend, family. I always tell wives, I just say, tread lightly in that area. A lot of times people feel like, I had a family member that went through something like this, or I had, a girlfriend who went through something like this. Let me get their perspective. Let me hear what they have to say. And I always say about that, there's nothing wrong with, being able to vent and, talking to a trusted friend. But a trusted friend, a family member, they can't give you a strategy, right? They can't give you a strategy. And you want to make sure that you are going to someone who can help you make the decision based off of the instructions that God has given you. One of the things I always tell wives, when they go to God in prayer and God gives them their instructions, you want to do a fast, right? You want to do a fast. You need to clear your mind. You need to make sure that before you start, screaming and, oh, I'm going to divorce you, and oh, this ain't going to work, or yada, yada, yada. Whatever it is that has come up, you need to make sure that you are in clear mind and that your emotions are regulated, are in the right place, because you don't want to make a decision based off of your emotions, based off of, what you have got, based off of what the situation is, whatever that injury is that you may be dealing with, right? Wives have to clear themselves. They have to empty themselves out. They have to shut off the, social media. They have to go on a fast. They have to consecrate themselves. They have to get into a secret place with the Lord so they can get the right instruction, right? Because one of the things I always hear from wives is, well, my husband, has, made a decision to divorce, or, I have biblical reason to divorce, to divorce my husband. And you do. If adultery and things like that have come about, yes, you do. But you always want to seek wisdom, because a lot of times when I tell wives, even if adultery has taken place, you have to make sure that God is clearing you to move on. You have to make sure that God is telling you, okay, you can leave this relationship or this marriage. A lot of times, wives automatically just assume because their husband is in an adulterous affair or has, started, adulterous, in adulterous relationship, that they can just automatically, okay, boom, boom, bang, I'm out of this. No, you need to seek ye first the kingdom of the Lord and see what it is that he has to say, okay? God hates divorce. And so because God hates divorce, you want to be very, very careful about what it is that you do and how you move forward with your decision. Now, before I answer those questions, I'm going to go to one of my Bible verses, and this is ones I always share with wives. When wives necessarily can't, set up a consultation, or they can't necessarily see Coach T right away, one of the Bible verses that I always recommend is 1 Corinthians 7, verses 10 to 17, right? And so I say this is your go-to. This is your go-to. When you are in a position, you're trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do or how I'm supposed to navigate through this. This is your go-to Bible verse, all right? And so I'm going to read it. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 10 to 17. And it says this: to the married, and this is Paul speaking, to the married, I give this command, not I, but the Lord. A wife must not separate from her husband. But if she does, she must remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. And a husband must not divorce his wife. To the rest I say this: I, not the Lord. If any brother has a wife who is not a believer, and she is willing to live with him, he must not divorce her. And if a woman has a husband who is not a believer, and he is willing to live with her, she must not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her believing husband. Otherwise, your children will be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbeliever leaves, let it be so. The brother or sister is not bound in such circumstances. God has called us to live in peace. How do you know, wife? How do you know whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Nevertheless, each person should live as a believer. Let me say that again. Each person should live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them, just as God has called them. That is your go-to Bible verse when you are hit with a marital injury, a marital challenge, a marital hardship, and you're trying to figure out what I need to do. I cannot afford counseling. I cannot afford coaching. I'm not really sure how to get in God's presence. Go to that Bible verse and read that. And ask God, help me to understand what it is that I need to do in my situation. Help me to understand which direction I need to go in my situation. Too many wives are running to the courthouse. Too many wives are running to their family and friends. Too many wives are listening to all these different videos and all this different, advice from all these different people, reading all these different books, and they're not consulting the Lord first. They're not reading 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 10 through 17, which that Bible, those verses tell you verbatim what you need to do and how to handle that situation. Because the only reason God allowed for a divorce to take place was because of the hardened hearts of a person. That was the only reason why he okayed Moses to give that to write that out, was because of the hardened hearts. And a lot of times that is what wives are, basing their situation off of. What the Bible says. Then you have some situations where it's like, well, that marriage may not necessarily work because, yes, God hates divorce, but God does not necessarily restore all marriages. And so wives want to know, well, if God hates divorce, then why he won't restore my marriage? If God hates divorce, why he doesn't restore marriages? Why he doesn't restore all marriages? God is the restorer of marriages. If a divorce takes place, it takes place because of a person's hardened heart. Let me say it again. God is the restorer of marriages. If a person's marriage does not continue or go forward, God's not necessarily in that, right? That person hardened heart led them to make that decision for them to go forward with the decision they made about getting a divorce. Now, I always like to just intercede in this area and say this. There are some times, and this is when it goes back to the importance of wives not just reading what the Bible says. Yes, the Bible is our guide. The Bible is what we go by. But there are some cases and incidents where wives need to be able to hear from God. This is what we call that rhema word, where you need to get every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Not just his written word, but every word that proceeds out of his mouth. Meaning sometimes God would say, we finished. This is over. It's done. When those types of situations happen or occur, God knows something about your husband that you don't know about. God knows and sees something about your husband that you don't know about. And that would not, and the plans that he has for your life is not an alignment with what your husband has going on or whatever in his life. Okay? So I always tell wives when it comes down to making a decision to divorce, or, you know, and this is one of the things I just tell my clients. I don't ever tell wives to leave or stay or go. My thing is, if you're the Christian, okay, going back to 1 Corinthians 7:17, as a believer, if you're the Christian, then you want to do everything in you as a Christian to navigate that place as long as the Lord gives you the grace to do so. As a Christian, you want to stay in that place is you don't help your husband to divorce you. I always tell wives that. You don't come alongside of him and say, okay, you don't come in agreement with him to divorce you. All right? That's not what you do as a Christian. As a Christian, we are called to forgive. As a Christian, we are called to bear. As a Christian, there are certain things that we are called to do. And I always tell wives, you know how much you can endure. What I may can endure, you may not necessarily can endure. And this is why it's so important for you to be seeking the counsel of the Lord. Once you get counsel from God and he give you your instructions, whether that is to be still, you go to your pastor or you go to your counselor, a Christian counselor, hopefully. You go to your therapist or you go to your coach, who I recommend. Because when you are in a situation like this, where abandonment, adultery, addiction has taken place, you need something or someone who has had this type of experience. A lot of times, wives are going to pastors who may not have had this type of experience or may not have walked this journey. A lot of times, wives are going to counselors or therapists who may not necessarily have experienced these things. I highly encourage wives, if you are dealing with something such as abandonment, addiction, adultery, you need to inquire with someone who has this experience. Now, going back to family and friends, your family and friends are not going to be able to give you a strategy. So we're going to put 2 X's on them, okay? I don't encourage wives to speak to your family and friends about this. This is something that I do not encourage. Your family and friends is somebody that's going to automatically favor you because they care about you. They're going to favor your side because they are on your side, right? They care about you and your feelings and how you are in the situation. So we're going to put an X on family and friends. When you talk about somebody who has experience, don't go to a pastor who never experienced something like this. Don't go to a counselor or a therapist who never experienced like this. Don't even go to a coach who have not walked this journey. You want to seek someone After you seek God's instructions and receive God's instructions, you want to go to someone who has experience in this area. Okay? And even when you pray and you pray about your marriage, you ask God at that time, Lord, send someone on my path that can help me with this. Send me to the right person. God, and direct me to the right person who will be able to help me on this journey. The next thing that a lot of wives run into, and I'm just trying to give y'all like the rundown. A lot of times, wives are in positions where, well, I want to go to counseling, but my husband doesn't necessarily want to go to counseling. How then can we fix our marriage if my husband doesn't want to go to counseling, but I want us to go to counseling, and we need counseling because this marriage is not good? If your husband is dealing with abandonment, addiction, adultery, going to counseling, if he himself is not saying, babe, let's go to counseling, and he's not saying that just to please you, you better make sure that you go get some help for yourself. A lot of times, what I have experienced is a lot of times these husbands who are in these positions, they are not even in position to go to counseling. I always say there's a difference between a natural hardship and a spiritual hardship. When you're dealing with something natural, that's something that you can probably seek counseling on. But if you are in a spiritual battle, addiction, adultery, those are spiritual battles. Those are spiritual things. You need more than a counselor, okay? You need somebody who understands this. You need somebody who can walk you through this. You need somebody who can be able to give you the vocabulary and the language to help you understand what is going on with your husband, what's going on in your marriage. Even abandonment. Abandonment is kind of like, it's a little bit tricky. It's kind of like half and half, right? But if you're dealing with abandonment issues, let's say for instance, your husband has abandoned you and you're not being sexually connected, that's a spiritual issue. That's a spiritual issue. And so wives have to first understand the basics. And I always say, I feel like a lot of wives are getting this marriage restoration stuff journey, all wrong. I feel like they're getting it wrong. And that's why I feel like I have to repeat it over and over again, because people need to understand what they are dealing with. Your first, when that marital injury occurs or that issue comes up, you need to be seeking the Lord. You need to seek the Lord because you need the Lord's instructions. Do not go to a counselor, a coach, a pastor, and expecting them to tell you something that only God can tell you about your marriage. Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done and over, only God will be the one who can restore that marriage. So you're going to a counselor or to a coach seeking for them to give you information about your marriage. No, they are only going based off of the instructions that you give me, based off of what thus said the Lord, what he said to you. That's then what I take to the Lord. And now I'll allow the Lord to download in me what I need to speak back out to you. If a counselor does not have that kind of experience, he's not going to be able to tell you that. If a pastor does not have that kind of experience, he's not or she's not going to be able to tell you that, right? They can tell you what the Bible said. They can tell you from experiences from other people. But if they have not had their own journey in this, if they have not walked this, they're not going to be a good fit for you. And this is where a lot of wives, I feel like, is missing it, right? This is where they're missing it. You got your instructions from the Lord. You have now seeked out the type of counsel you want, whether it's a coach, pastor, whoever you is. Like I said, we're going to remove the family member. We're going to remove the friends. Those people are not necessarily good sources for you to be talking to about your marriage, because you have to be careful who you share your marriage information with. Okay? If you are in a place where you're not able to move forward with a counselor or a coach or, a therapist or what have you, then you need to reverence 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 10 to 17. You need to ask the Lord to make that Bible verse very clear to you and let you know what your next steps are and what you're doing. Now, this is where people get it mixed up at. This is where wives go left at, because they feel like, well, God said this to me and God told me to do this, so I'm good. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because this journey has layers, right? This journey have layers. It's not like a one time I got an answer and that's it. No, you have to understand there is levels to this, right? Once you get this, you go to the next level. Once you get that, you go to the next level. Once you get that, you go to the next level. It's levels to this thing. So once God has made you understand what 1 Corinthians 10 to 17 means, you still need to be praying and asking God, send me the right person on my path, send me the right person on my journey who would be able to accommodate what I'm able to afford, or Lord, you made provision for me to be able to afford, for me to get the necessary help that I need next. Okay? A coach, a counselor, a therapist, and a pastor, those are totally different type of counsel. It's a totally different price range, all right? You can go to the pastor, you can probably go to the pastor for free if you go to church with him. A counselor, a therapist, if you got insurance, you can probably use your insurance to go through counseling or therapy. But when you're dealing with a coach, this is where it hits another level. And this is why so many wives are stopping right here. Because it's like, oh, well, what if I do all this and I pay all this money and my husband, he still do the wrong thing? What if I put all this money into this and I do all this kind of stuff and he still do the wrong thing? You got to get your mind renewed. Okay? One of the things that wives have to do on this journey when they step into this place after God has given them an instruction, usually that instruction is connected to a promise, it's connected to some kind of Bible scripture, it's connected to something where you know, okay, God told me this, because that's going to be your place where you're going to hold on to that. If you come into this thing where, well, I don't want to do this because, my husband, he might... You got to get your mind renewed. And this is why I always tell wives, don't wait on this journey. You want to start doing your work right away. You don't want to be passive in this. It's kind of like taking your time and just like, okay, well, I got a stamp, and so I'm going to just stay here in this place. No, because the longer you wait to get the necessary help that you need, the longer you are prolonging this situation. Because God has something to say to you. This type of journey, this spiritual journey that you're on in your marriage, God talks, God speaks. He has something to say. God is not going to just say one thing to you this day and don't say nothing to you ever again no more. This journey requires your ears to be open. This journey requires you to be able to hear from God. This journey requires you to know what thus said the Lord. You need to know what his word said, and you need to know when he speaks to you. Go back to John 10:27. You have to be able to hear from God because God is giving you instructions. This is not a one-time we're going to go to counseling and fix it and everything is fine type of thing. No. And this is why a lot of wives are messing this up. Because you think you can just go to a counseling, you go to a couple of counseling sessions and that's it. No. Many other wives that I work with and coach, I've been working with these wives for over 2-3 years even. Right? And these wives are at a place where they have seen the levels to this thing. Because it's not a one-time thing. Because God is always revealing something to you on this journey. Something is always coming up. Your injury, that's just step one. Unfortunately. Your injury is just a door opener. Your injury is just breaking ground. Okay? So go back and listen to this from the beginning. I can't repeat all that stuff I just said. I just said a whole lot of stuff, but that's just what I try to help wives to understand, and why it's so important for wives to know that this is not just about I'm watching some videos or I'm just reading my Bible or I'm just fasting. Girl, you got so much stuff that God is trying to reveal to you and God's trying to bring to your attention. You cannot afford to just hold on to just that one thing. I get some wives sometimes who tell me, well, Coach C, God hasn't said anything else. God is always talking. That means you have not went deeper in him. That means you have not healed enough for him to say something else. That means there is something else going on with you, because God is always speaking and there is something he wants to reveal to you. God does not speak and tell you the next instruction until you first do the last thing that he has told you to do. Okay. Let's go to this question. So the first one was, when is enough enough? Like, where is the cutoff? That question is kind of a little bit difficult. That's kind of hard. I can't really answer that without really fully knowing what you have going on, what your situation is. Like I said, everybody has their pain limit. Everybody has a limit of what they can and cannot take. When you say when is enough enough, that makes me wonder, have you gotten a specific instruction from the Lord? Has God given you a specific promise? Did God say something to you specifically? When you say enough is enough, it makes me wonder, are you doing this in your own strength? Are you fighting this in your own strength? Are you trying to figure this out doing just the basic religion surface-based stuff? Because if you are, then that question is going to be a question that comes up. You will not have to ask when is enough if you have specific instructions and a specific strategy on what you're supposed to be doing. One of the questions I always ask wives when they do a consultation with me is, what was the promise that God made to you? What did God tell you about your marriage? What did God promise you about your marriage? I can't tell you that. I can only go based off of what you tell me, what you said, what you feel like God has said to you, what you feel like God has placed in your spirit. So when you say is enough, that question makes me wonder, are you doing this in your own strength, and have you seek the Lord? If you have not seek the Lord, you have not went on a fast, you have not consecrated yourself and quiet yourself, turn off the noise, turn off the family members, turn off all the videos, and got by yourself and heard from God yourself, then you're not going to know when enough is enough, right? So that one would depend more on, I would need more information to really get in depth in that. Like I said, everybody pain limit, they know how much they can endure and what they cannot endure. Like I said, my limit may be different from your limit, but it also depends on what the instruction is, because sometimes God gives instructions, and wherever God gives instruction, he gives grace. If God is telling you to do something, to be in a certain place, he's going to give you the grace to do so. So you don't have to ask when is enough, because God's going to give you he's going to give you grace to do it. So that tells me that you may not have a specific instruction from God, or you have not spent that time with God to get the specific instruction. All right. The next question. My husband has filed for a divorce. What do I do now? Nobody cares. Nobody cares that your husband has filed for a divorce. The only thing that matters is what you do next. What you do is not come in agreement with him. That's one. What you do is not say, okay, well, send me the papers or this, that, whatever. Even if he send you the papers, even if the papers are being mailed out to you, even if, something comes to you, you want to go to the throne room. You want to make sure that you are meeting God in a secret place, so you would know how to be able to cancel those things, right? I always tell wives, you get you a red marker. Those papers, if you have the actual papers in your hand, you put a red cross to that, and you plead the blood of Jesus against those papers. Because if you go back to the Bible, like I think it's in Matthew, and it talks about if a husband wants to divorce his wife, and that wife was not one who had an adulterous affair, this husband basically now is putting this wife in a position where she becomes an adulterer. If you divorce me and I was not the one who cheated, or I didn't have an affair, but you divorced me, you are now putting me in a position where I become the adulterer, right? And so what I tell wives in that situation like that, do not be quick to come in agreement with your husband when it comes down to divorce. Make sure that you are following pursuit, meaning what did God tell you? A lot of times wives say, well, God told me, that he told me to pursue, or God told me to be still, but my husband still, asking for a divorce. Your husband can ask for a divorce until his eyes turn red. Your husband can send you papers. Your husband can, and this is one of the things I always say, the only time it gets serious or major is when you get a notice and you have to go to court. When you have to go to court, at that point, you need to know what thus said the Lord. Because there are certain things that you cannot avoid. You still have to do the things, the natural and practical things. You still have to do those things. But you do not have to come in agreement with. A lot of wives say sometimes, I told my husband I don't want a divorce. You don't want to tell him nothing. You don't want to have no kind. If your husband is sending you divorce papers, your thing is to just do what you're supposed to do in the natural. If the divorce papers say, okay, you need to respond or apply or reply to these things, you want to do everything naturally. But as you're doing those things, you are still standing on God's instruction and standing on God's word and what he has told you. God, I am not in agreement with this. God, I'm still not believing this. I don't want to do this. And you allow God to break that. There has been plenty of times, I'm telling you from my own personal experience working with wives, where husbands have said that they were going to divorce their wives and they never did. Where husbands have got the paperwork together and sent stuff over, nothing went through. There have been series of situations that happen where divorce have come up. Listen, wives, divorce can come up all day long. Take divorce all up the table. You don't have to come in agreement with it. The only time you have to do something when it comes down to a divorce situation is if they're saying you have to go to court, or you have to respond in a certain kind of way, that kind of thing or whatever. And from there, you, even in that situation, you want to still trust God. That is divorce, and a divorce notice is not the key that you want to throw away. All right, well, he wanted a divorce, so I guess the marriage is over. That does not mean that. Especially if God has given you a promise, okay? Especially if God has been specific, very specific with you. Coach T went all the way to the court to divorce her husband, fill up paperwork and everything, and left the courtroom and everything, and the Lord told me now go and dismiss it. God can do miraculous things. God can do whatever it is that he wants to do, whenever he wants to do. All he needs is that one willing and obedient spouse who will believe. Okay, so divorce does not end a marriage. Divorce does not mean a divorce notice or my husband. Even when your husband tell you that he wants a divorce, but he hasn't actually went and got the paperwork or did the work, that is your opportunity. That's your opportunity to pray. That is the time when God is God is giving you the heads up. Okay, he's asking for a divorce. That means you need to come and spend some time with me. Okay, he's talking to counsels. He's talking to people. That means you need to come and spend some time with me so I can give you the instructions on what you need to do next. Divorce, a divorce notice, a threat that I want a divorce does not mean your marriage is over. Wives have to stop thinking that a divorce notice or a divorce threat or the husband saying that he wants a divorce is a divorce. When those words come up, that is your time to pray. That is your time to seek counsel, the right counsel from the right person who has experienced these types of things, who can help you walk through it and give you a strategy. There are specific prayers that you need to be praying. There are specific things that you need to be bringing down. There are specific things that you need to be doing during this time. A divorce does not mean that my marriage is over. A divorce threat of my husband telling me that he wants a divorce does not mean my divorce is over. All right, the marriage is over. That's not what that means. So I would just encourage that person to, again, something I can't, like I said, I can only go based off of. I can't really get into detail because I don't know your situation, but I'm just trying to give you like the surface stuff. The next question: my husband and I are not being intimate, but we are still sleeping in the same room. We are still sleeping in the same bedroom. And she also mentioned that, they still have dinner together. They still go to events together. So they still live a life like they're married people, but they're not being intimate. Wives. And this is going to be hard for a lot of people to understand and receive. A lot of times, okay, if you and your husband are not being intimate, and y'all are sleeping in the same bedroom, or y'all, in the same home, or what have you, and you are not being intimate with your husband, witchcraft is present. Let me say that again. Witchcraft is present. Usually, when a husband is not being intimate with his wife, he's either not being he's dealing with some kind of spiritual situation. He can be dealing with a spirit wife. He can be dealing with a love spell. He can be, dealing with another woman. He could be involved with another woman. He could be being disrespected by his wife, being disrespected and manipulated and controlled by his wife. Ma'am, that falls up underneath witchcraft as well. So many wives think that bossing their husbands around and controlling their husbands and, telling their husband what to do is a normal thing. Ma'am, that falls underneath witchcraft as well. Okay? He could be doing some type of substance that falls up underneath witchcraft. Okay? Some type of substance can be taking place. He can be taking pills. He can be on some type of doing some kind of drug activity. He could be involved in these things. A lot of times when a husband and wife is not sleeping together, witchcraft is present. Now, there are different parts of witchcraft, which is why you need to get the resources, which is why you need to be connected to somebody who understands these things, because there are specific prayers that you can pray. There are specific things that you can do to cancel these things, to pray against these things, right? There are specific, is different categories of witchcraft. You can have witchcraft, just witchcraft itself. You can be dealing with anti-marriage force. You can be dealing with incubus or is it incubus? Type of spirit. It's a lot of different spirits that fall up underneath witchcraft. You need to find out which one it is. Okay? So usually when a husband is not sleeping with his wife, there is some witchcraft is present in that. Okay? Witchcraft is present in that. Now, And I'm talking about wives who are dealing with, abandonment, who are dealing with, addiction, adultery, who is dealing with, a spiritual situation. I'm not talking about the wife whose husband may be, sick, or, maybe not feeling well, or maybe got something going on. I'm not talking about that kind of husband. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about a wife who is dealing with a spiritual situation. If you are in your 20s or in your 30s and you and your husband are having sex, something is going on. Okay? Something is going on. If it's not a medical condition, if we have ruled out the medical condition, witchcraft is present. All right, witchcraft is present, and so you need to find out. You need to get the right resources and the right tools. Again, this is something I cannot get into detail without knowing your whole full story. But you need to get the right tools so you can get the right strategy on what it is that you need to be doing. All right. Then we have another question is, my husband is going away on a road trip, and I think he's taking the other woman with him. What should I do? What can you do? Right? What can you do? A lot of times, I always tell wives, one of the hardest things is when a husband is very upfront and forward with his wife about what he's doing, right? That's hard, right? He's very upfront, he's very forward, and he feels like, well, if I'm being honest with you, that allows you to make a decision to leave me or to go, so I don't have to be the one to do it. If I'm being honest with you, then you get to make a decision whether or not you want to continue in this with me, because I'm being honest with you. And so because I'm being honest with you, you can make a decision to leave me, and so it won't look like I left you, or it won't look like I did something wrong, right? When you are hit in situations like that, wives, you have to understand and know, anytime you get information up front like that whether good, bad, indifferent, ugly, whatever the situation is, that is an opportunity. Those become your prayer points. Sometimes, depending on where you are on your walk in Christ, depending on where you are in the Lord, depending on what the Lord is saying to you, you can cancel, you can stop, you can intervene, you can intercept, you can come in between what that person got going on and stop that trip from happening. But it's how much do you believe? How much faith do you have? I used to always tell wives, anytime you have an opportunity where God gives you a heads up, where God gives you information that you know about something ahead of time, that's your opportunity to go behind the scenes and pray. I remember a time when my husband, he would travel. He wouldn't even tell me when he would travel. But the little bit that he didn't know, because of where I was with God, God will always let me know. So he wouldn't tell me, but God would give me a heads up, right? It was certain things that, different family members or whatever would just try to keep away from me. But those was the times when God would speak to me even the more. Why? God is not going to keep you in the dark about your situation, especially if he has a plan for you and he has a plan for your marriage. God is going to give you a heads up. So anytime you get news like that, or anytime that your husband is being upfront with you like that, yes, it's gonna hurt, yes, it's gonna make you feel some type of way, but this is why you need to get connected with a coach, get connected with somebody who can help you. But those become your prayer points, and you have the power and authority as his wife, as a woman of God, as a woman who is in a relationship with God, in covenant with your husband. You have the power and authority to cancel that. That does not have to happen. There have been plenty of times where I had prayed against certain things and it did not go through. It did not happen. I have seen some of the wives that I've worked and coached where they have intervened. When they have, intervened, God has let them know something. And that's the whole purpose of God letting you know and giving you the heads up, so you can intervene. Now what do you say? Well, Coach T, I prayed, I fast, I did all these things and it still happened. That's not a problem. Whatever, that's how God wanted it to be. That's how it be. But don't think that prayer and that fasting didn't do something on the other end. Don't think that prayer and that fasting didn't do something in the spirit world. Don't think that prayer and fasting just completely didn't do nothing. It did not go in vain. So even if it doesn't stop the trip, that person can go on that trip. They can not have a good time. Something can happen. God can give them a sign. God can show them somebody. Anything can happen. So even if you pray and the person still go, it's not like you don't lose hope in that. Don't say, oh, well, I prayed and did all these things and nothing happened. No, God can send somebody to where he is. God can give him a sign. God can do something while he's on that trip. So don't think that when God gives you this information that you're supposed to just like, oh, okay, just let it be. No, you still have an obligation to intervene, to intercede. So when situations like come up like that, and your husband's being upfront with you and he's letting you know stuff, direct like that, you want to make sure that you are praying against it, okay? And then the last one is, my husband and I are being intimate, but I feel like he's still messing around with someone else. What should I do? Ma'am, intimacy with your husband, and he's there in the home with you, and you guys are there in the home, you have an obligation to be with your husband. You have an obligation to be with your husband. Now, because we have to use practical sense, because we have to use, we have to use common sense, you have to also understand you have to make sure that you're protecting yourself. Lord, I feel like my husband is being with someone else. I feel like my husband is sleeping with somebody else. I don't necessarily feel comfortable, or I don't necessarily feel like I should be doing these things. How should I handle this situation? How should I go about this? And one of the things I always tell wives, this is another subject where I don't tell wives to do it or not to do it. What I tell them is to seek the Lord, right? Because she was in situations where there were times where I knew my husband was with somebody. I knew he was with somebody. And the Lord told me to be with my husband, and he got me covered. Right? Then there were some times where it was like, no, I'm not supposed to be with him. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be with him. Right? So you have to know what God is saying to you. If God is telling you to be with your husband, if God is not you saying, oh, well, that's my husband, I'm with my husband, and you ain't went and talked to God about it, anything happen. But if you went to God and God has told you pursue, or God has told you to continue to sleep with your husband, God is going to cover and God is going to protect you. Now, again, Coach C is just one of those ones who always tell her wives, make sure that you're covering yourself. Make sure that you protect yourself. You got to still use wisdom, right? You have to still make sure that you're going and getting yourself checked and those types of things or whatever, as you are still trusting God. You are still trusting God, but you want to make sure that you are doing the practical things that you're supposed to be doing the practical things that you're supposed to be doing too as a wife, right? So if you are sleeping with your husband, but you feel like he's still sleeping with somebody else, this is another thing. You don't want to stop praying. So many times wives feel like once things between my husband and I have gotten to this place, or I feel like, we are back in this place, I can stop praying. Ma'am, no, you cannot. No, you cannot. The enemy, he leaves for a moment and he comes back and he tries to do something even bigger. You have to stay on guard. You have to stay on the fence. You have to stay in the throne room. Okay, don't think because all of a sudden you and your husband are having a good season, everything is good, that means you have to stop praying. No, you still have an obligation to cover him and keep him lifted and continue to plead the blood of Jesus against this other person and continue to send a fire against her and continue to tell God to deal with her. All right, dismantle that relationship, come in between that relationship, God, overthrow that relationship. I pray for confusions and all kinds of hell to break through in that relationship. Lord, break that soul tie between them. Whatever it is, you want to continue to pray. Right? It don't necessarily mean you have to be warfaring every single day. Sometimes a prayer is simply, I plead the blood of Jesus over my husband today, and I send a fire of God against a strange woman. I plead the blood of Jesus over my husband today. May the fire of God deal with that strange woman. A simple prayer, something simple and easy. You're not warfaring and going crazy. Every time you think about your husband and this other person, you want to make sure that you are sending some type of warfare prayers against that person. All right? Why do I say you need a coach? Why would I recommend a coach? Let's just go to what a coach does. Let's just say you were playing a sport, right? And you're trying to get really, really good at this sport. Let's just use Michael Jordan for example. Him as a great basketball player. He did all these great things in the basketball world. Do you think he got there only by his own strength, or did he have to invest in himself for him to get good at this? Wives got to get to a place where they stop thinking about how much this costs and what if I do all these things and my marriage still don't work out? What if I do all this investing in my marriage still don't work out? If that is your mind frame and that's your mindset that you have about it, then that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be. Wives have to get so secure and so solid with the promise and the instructions that God is giving her to that part is not even what even matters. The whole part of her having a coach is to get wisdom, support, insight, accountability, and maintenance. right? So she can maintain herself, so she can stay healthy. I think I heard the Dr. Shanika, who did our wife's appreciation self-care day. One of the things she talked about was what the Bible talks about, you would faint not, you will reap what you sow if you faint not, basically. And she said a lot of times people faint because they're not taking care of themselves. A lot of times people fail on this journey because they're not prioritizing themselves. And so if you're not renewing your mind, if you're not checking in, if you're not seeing about yourself, if you're not being held accountable, you can easily fall into deception. You can easily walk into some blind spots. You can easily fall backwards. You can easily, have that what's the word they've been using? I can't think of the word. Some kind of symptom, but it's you fall back into these things because you do not have the necessary counsel that you need on a regular base. One of the things I tell wives, if your husband, and this is what I do in my curriculum, Her Bonus Boost, after wives have done my curriculum, Her Bonus Boost, and they have walked with me for a whole year, if her husband is in the home and they are still in a heavy place, I encourage her to check in monthly. But if she is in a place after her completing her Bonus Boost curriculum and her husband is not in the home, then she only needs to check in every 3 months. But that depends on how well she is, how transformed she is, how much of her work that she has done, how much of the healing that she has done. Wives, you would not be successful on this journey alone. You would not be successful on this journey alone. Quick transparency. I think I've shared with you guys before where I did I remember the first year or so, maybe not even a whole year, it was just me and God. God had told me what my husband was coming back home. God had given me, specific instructions. I had got through all my crazy girl moments because, I was like a real hot girl. Coach T was off the chain. I was going to the house in the middle of the night. I was showing my monkey tail, okay? I was blowing up the man's phone. He had to block me, everything. Acting a straight butt. So once I got through all that, and I finally came to a place of realization, look, this is going to be what it's going to be. One of the prayers I remember praying was, God, if, send me somebody on my journey who can help me, but make sure whoever this person that you sent on my journey, they are telling me the same things that you are already telling me. Because if they're telling me something differently, or they're telling me something that you're not telling me, I'm not going to believe them. So send me somebody on my journey to help me. Well, I didn't necessarily have a coach. I call her that. She wasn't necessarily a mentor, but she was more of a, for me, I feel like she was more of an intercessor, right? And her job in my life was to helped me to, she did a lot of work in the area of maintenance and support, where she basically was just helping me by praying me through certain things. When I had those faint moments where I wanted to give up and I wanted to throw in the towel, she was the one who gave me a different perspective and helped me to see my situation from a different place. She was the one who helped me to not just throw in my towel and throw it all away when God hadn't got me to this place or got me to this point. And so one of the things I always encourage wives, when you are in a position like this, yes, you want to seek the Lord first, but you also want to seek the Lord about who it is that he wants to send on your journey to help you with this. Everybody don't have a room table talking about your marriage, or they shouldn't. All your friends, Coach T was bad with that. Oh, I was so bad with that. I was so bad. I'm talking about that more on Saturday. How, some of that stuff that I shared with other people, the backlash I received from that, the trust that was lost, different ones that, wanted entry into my marriage, and they wanted to know, what was the end score? What ended up happening? We hadn't got all this information from you all these years and all this time, and now we don't have access to you that way no more. And so I just always want to just caution wives. I always just want to caution wives. Be real careful of who you sharing your information with. Friends, family members, you want to be careful. You want to be real careful about those things. And you really want to really be strategic about praying about who God is leading you to help you on this journey. All right. Listen, wives, this is hard stuff. This is hard. This journey is hard. It's nothing about this journey that is easy, but I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to get with the right counsel. It's not just because he's a pastor. It's not because she's a pastor. Do she have the experience? Has she been through the same stuff that you have been through? It's not just because you come on these video messages and these persons talking about, this prophetic word, and this person talking about marriage, and this person about marriage restoration. Everybody had a different perspective and you need to know who you are connecting yourself with and who God is allowing you to speak into your marriage. Because speaking to somebody's marriage, this is a big deal. Okay. People get their head cut off. You better ask John the Baptist. All right. People can get their head cut off when you come into somebody's marriage covenant, and you gotta make sure that whoever you are sharing this information with, that this is someone that God has allowed to be on this journey with you to help you. That was one of the greatest things that God did for me by placing my intercessor. And like I said, it did help that I had a relationship with her. I knew her. We went to the same church, so I had built a relationship with her. And sometimes you do have to watch a couple of videos. You do have to watch, see a person. You do need to see if a person is consistent, if a person is serious, if a person not just popping on here just saying, oh, I'm a coach, this and that today, and then they're not here tomorrow. You do need to be on their email list and see what they got going on. You do need to be on their social media platforms and looking at their other stuff and seeing what kind of life they living outside of this. It's not just, oh, I'm just showing up and being this person. No, you need to know who you are connecting yourself with and who you're paying your coins to. Because at the end of the day, you're paying your coins for this person to coach you on this journey. This journey should not be dealt alone, wife. I want to encourage you, if you have not already signed up for your wife consultation, I want to encourage you to sign up today. www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. If you are a wife and you've been following Coach T for a while and you're like, you know what? I am ready to do my work. I'm ready to do the Her Bonus Boost curriculum. I want to encourage you to sign up for that. www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Listen, y'all enjoy the rest of your self-care authority. I do hope that message have been encouragement to you. If you have any questions, listen, reach out. Coach C is here. I don't mind asking questions. I even let some of my wife clients text me once we get to that place. You can even text me if you have questions like that. But get the necessary help. Stop thinking that there's only one way to seek counsel. Oh, I'm going to go to my church. Oh, I'm going to go to my small group. I'm going to go to my pastor. I'm going to go to my counselor. I'm going to go to my therapist. Do any of these people got this kind of experience? Because if they don't got this kind of experience, then they ain't the ones that really need to be helping you. You need to talk to somebody who can help you, who has this experience, who have went through these things, so they can teach you what to look forward to, what to expect, and how to get through this journey in the most healthiest way. www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Listen, love y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Blessings.